You ever seen two brothers fight over a bedroom? Now imagine they think God gave them the whole house. That's what we're looking at. A 3,000-year-old conflict rooted in a promise made to both of them. Two sons, one father, one piece of land. The older son, Ishmael, is seen as the forefather of the Arab world. The younger, Isaac, is the ancestor of the Israelites. And they both believe they inherited the same holy ground. Look, this isn't just politics. This is not just religion. This is about family. It's about divine real estate claimed by two people who both say, God said it was mine. Today, we call it Israel and Palestine. We see airstrikes, checkpoints, and protests. But behind the headlines is a much older story. A story of two brothers torn apart, of promises passed down, of a sacred land now soaked in blood. So if you're wondering how a conflict can last this long, you've got to go back to where it started, in the tent of a man named Abraham. Let's rewind. Thousands of years ago, there was a man named Abraham, the father of three world religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. God spoke to Abraham and said, I will make of you a great nation. Your descendants will be as numerous as the stars, and I will give them a land to call their own. That land, the stretch of earth we now call Israel and Palestine. That promise is what everyone's been fighting over ever since. But here's the twist: Abraham didn't just have one son, he had two sons. Abraham's wife Sarah couldn't have children, so she told him to sleep with her servant Hagar, an Egyptian woman. Hagar gave birth to Ishmael, the firstborn, the rightful heir, at least by tradition. But then something unexpected happened. Years later, Sarah miraculously became pregnant. This kind of was the prophecy in the first place. She gave birth to Isaac, and suddenly the power dynamics flipped. Sarah didn't want Ishmael around anymore, so she told Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away, exiled into the wilderness, banished, gone, finito, bye bye, whatever word you got for it, by the same family that created him. But God heard Hagar's cries, and instead of letting them die in the wilderness, he made a second promise. I will also make a great nation of him, referring to Ishmael, because he is your son. Two sons, two promises, one holy land. Both Isaac and Ishmael were blessed. Both were chosen. Both became fathers of nations. Isaac's descendants became the Israelites. Ishmael's descendants became the Arab people. Isaac eventually got to Jesus. Ishmael eventually got to Muhammad. So you have to understand, that's where this begins. Not with bombs, not with borders, but with a family fracture. Two brothers, one thrown out, one kept close, and the land caught between them. It's Genesis, yes, but it's also the original eviction notice, and the ripple effects are still shaking the world to this day. So, how do we go from brothers in Genesis to blood in the streets of Gaza? Let's fast forward a few thousand years now, past the Roman Empire, the Crusades, and the Ottoman rule, and land in the early 1900s. Europe is rising. Colonialism is peaking, and Jewish communities, long persecuted across the West, start organizing a movement called Zionism. The goal? A Jewish homeland, a return to the land of Abraham, to Israel. Look, Zionism wasn't just religious, it was political. It said, we need a state, we need safety, and that land is our birthright. But there was a problem. That land wasn't empty, it was already home to another branch of Abraham's family, the Palestinians, Arabs who'd lived there for centuries. Muslims, Christians, Jews, all mixed across villages, farms, and cities. But Britain had other plans. Britain kind of broke the world. We're going to talk about that in the future. Britain broke the fucking world. Like, really. You can trace, like, all the problems in the world back to Britain damn near. Look, in 1917, during World War I, the British issued the Balfour Declaration, a promise to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Except, they'd already promised the same land to the Arabs for helping fight the Ottomans. Two promises, one territory. Now, does that sound familiar at all? Right? The British ruled the region for 30 years. Then, after the Holocaust, global sympathy for Jewish people surged. And in 1948, Britain pulled out and Israel declared independence. For the Jewish people, it was survival, a miracle, a long awaited return. But for Palestinians, it was the Nakba, the catastrophe. Over 750,000 Palestinians were displaced. Entire villages were wiped off the map. Families fled with nothing but keys to homes they'd never see again. They didn't just lose land, they lost history, they lost citizenship, they lost their identity, and they became the refugees in the land of their ancestors. Meanwhile, the new Israeli state wasn't built on peace. It was built under military rule with outside backing, especially from the United States. And every time Palestinians pushed back, they were labeled terrorists. Does that sound familiar? Lord have mercy. It's like we're running the same playbook in every system of corruption in the world. It's the same playbook, bro. Just when things couldn't get more volatile, Iran stepped in. After the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran went from Western ally to anti Western theocracy, and one of its top enemies, Israel. To Iran's new rulers, Israel wasn't just a military opponent, it was a Zionist outpost in the Muslim world, an extension of the United States, a symbol of everything they were fighting against. So, what did they do? They weaponized the Israel Palestine wound. Iran began funding and training militant groups, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Islamic Jihad, and later Hamas in Gaza. These weren't just charities or resistance groups, they were armed with rockets, ideology, and Iranian money, turned into frontline soldiers in a regional power war. And while many Palestinians had real grievances, Iran helped turn those grievances into a permanent war. Now, Israel wasn't just fighting for land, they were fighting a proxy war with Iran across Palestinian bodies. So when Israel bombs Gaza, it's not just about Hamas, it's about Iran's influence. And recently in the news, I wrote the script a while ago, we see Iran and Israel fighting each other. It's more direct now. Look, and when civilians die, they die in a war they didn't even start, between a military superpower and a theocratic empire fighting with other people's pain. In the decades since, Israel has built illegal settlements across Palestinian land, imposed military checkpoints, curfews, and ID systems, cut Gaza off from clean water, electricity, and medicine, bombed hospitals, schools, apartment buildings, and now, Israel controls nearly the whole region, while Palestinians are squeezed into shrinking pockets of land. This isn't ancient prophecy anymore. This is modern apartheid, and the original family feud has been weaponized, militarized, and turned into a war machine. So when people say it's complicated, sure, I get it. It's ancient, it's religious, it's geopolitical. But it's also pretty simple. Two people were promised the same land. One was cast out, the other built the wall. And now we're here. Here's what gets lost in all the fire and the rubble. They were both promised the same land by the same God. According to scripture, Isaac, the son of Sarah, is the father of Israel. Ishmael, the son of Hagar, is the father of Arabs. And both were blessed. Genesis 17 says Ishmael will become a great nation. Genesis 26 confirms Isaac carries the covenant. So, what happened? Somewhere between the promise and the power, the story split. The land that was meant to unite their descendants became the reason they waged war. Instead of honoring a shared ancestor, they weaponized their birthrights. Instead of remembering their reunion to bury their father Abraham, they buried generations in his name. And now, each side says, God gave us this land. God told us to defend it. God is on our side. But if your God only protects your tribe and justifies every bomb, every checkpoint, every child buried under rubble, then maybe you're not following God. Maybe, just maybe, think about it for a second. You're following a flag. Maybe you're a nationalist. The truth is, this war doesn't make God look righteous. It makes all of us look lost. Because if this is what being chosen looks like, maybe we've misunderstood the assignment. Let's be honest, there may be no clean resolution to this conflict. The blood is ancient, the power is modern, and the pain is generational. But here's what most people forget: the promise was never about borders, man. That's a man made new thing. It was about becoming the people who could carry God's name. That means protecting the stranger, freeing the oppressed, feeding the hungry, welcoming the exiled, not bombing them, not starving them. What if the true inheritance wasn't the land, but the spirit we were meant to embody within it? Because here's the uncomfortable truth: every time a missile flies across that sky, Abraham loses another child. Every checkpoint, every eviction, every suicide bomb, every residential structure toppled is another nail in the covenant we were supposed to uphold. The prophets didn't die to make gods out of flags. They died trying to remind us that holy land means nothing without holy people. Look, and maybe that's the question now. Not whose land is this, but what kind of people are we becoming on that land? Because if all Abraham's children were once buried together, maybe the real prophecy isn't about who owns the land. Maybe the prophecy is about who's willing to share it. And maybe, just maybe, when people decide to share it, then you can actually live in the promised land in peace. Like, God, shit ain't that complicated, bro. Okay, it is that complicated. It's very complicated. They say this land is holy, but the land never asked to be fought over. It never chose sides. It just held the footsteps of prophets and waited to see if we'd walk in them. But we didn't. We drew lines. We buried our cousins. We turned temples into targets and prayers into policy. Listen, we stand over a place soaked in scripture, asking God to choose a side when He already made a covenant with both sides. Maybe the test was never about claiming the promise. Maybe it was about keeping it. Because if God was ever in that land, He's waiting to return, but not for war. He'll return for memory, for mercy, for His children to actually act like family. So, why the hell would Jesus come back now? What is He coming back to? The fuck? I'll see y'all next video.